So many desires, or as many desires, so many blankets. Covering the radiance of the Spirit. We have to uncover to discover. We have to uncover, discover. We have to uncover, discover.
Welcome, everyone, to the Divine Discoveries podcast. Here we are gathered again for another wonderful episode where we have a lot of interesting things to talk about, a very interesting subject. And we're going to talk about the G term, the G entity. And I think most of you would probably guess, based on the genre of podcast that we have, that G stands for God. So we're going to be covering God in various aspects and trying to explore that the entity or the being that is God. It's a very, very big subject, but we look forward to trying to make it lighter and a little bit simpler for all of us to understand. On that note, I'd like to go ahead and start the invocation prayers. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sadguru Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mokshiya Mamratat. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Bhur Bhuvaswaha. Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat. Om Apadam Apahartaram Dataram Sarvasampadam Lokabhiramam Shriramam Bhuyo Bhuyo Namamyaham. Shri Rama Jai Rama Jai Jai Rama. Shri Rama Jai Rama Jai Jai Rama. Om Shri Rama Jai Rama Jai Jai Rama. Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanurmardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Shri Krishnam Vande Jagatgurum. Om Klim Krishnaya Namaha. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. God bless everyone. And we have our castmates with us, Christiane and Vikram. Christiane's going to be joining us for a very short time today, unfortunately, but she is going to contribute in the short period of time that she's on with us and give us a perspective pretty soon. But before we actually turn the mic over to Christiane, I'd like to announce some very good news that we received from our castmate, Vikram Mathur, who is an expecting father for the second time. He has a beautiful daughter whose name is Devi, and she's just over a year old, and they're now expecting their second child. So congratulations, Vikram. This has to be one of the greatest blessings for you and Shefali.
Thank you so much. It really is, and we're very lucky that the family's expanding and that we have the good wishes of friends such as you to go through this happy time. So thank you very much for the wishes.
Yes, Mazel Tov, Vikram. Thank you, Prat. And we just want to thank all of our listeners and the individuals who are following, subscribing, sharing our podcast. We are presently found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. You can find us on social media as well. We're Facebook. Our page is Divine Discoveries, and Instagram channel is Divine_Discoveries_108. And we have something new that we just launched. We have a WhatsApp channel. So if you search for Divine Discoveries, you can find us, and we'd love to have you join our channel and get all of our episodes and updates. And we still have the same email address, divinediscoveries108@gmail.com. So keep your feedback coming. We love engaging with you guys. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Christiane. So I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about God, it's such a difficult subject, or basically when we talk about God, there's only some fragment of it that we can potentially maybe say we understand. It's something that is hard to describe. It's what we're trying to describe, the indescribable, essentially, right? We're trying to fathom the unfathomable. So when we think about how big God can be in terms of an entity or something that we imagine God must be like, it's sometimes very difficult to wrap our head around that. So I wanted to know, like, what is the perspective on God that we can gain from the Jewish standpoint?
Thank you, Pratt. Yes, I'm sorry I can't be with you guys for the whole episode today, but I'm going to try and give you some meaningful insight here regarding the Jewish perspective of God. So I'll start with Maimonides. So Maimonides is an extremely influential rabbi, philosopher, and scholar of the Middle Ages. And according to Maimonides, quote, according to Jewish thought, God is the omnipotent, infinite, all-powerful source of existence. He created the world, sustains it, and oversees everything that happens throughout the totality of existence. Okay, so then let's talk about God in Torah. That's our holy book. There's many different names in Torah for God. Lord, King, Creator, or Master of the universe. The Holy One, blessed be He. The very observant will say Hashem. Hashem in Hebrew translates into the name. So they're basically saying this is the name which can never be named because it is both so holy and so beyond our limited human comprehensive abilities. He's often identified as a he, but also sometimes as a she. There's a Hebrew word, Shekhinah. It means God dwelling within, and it's a feminine word in Hebrew because Hebrew has feminine and masculine words. So Shekhinah is feminine, and it's often translated as the divine presence. God is also repeatedly portrayed as a judge, a king, or a father. And sometimes he's very strict and harsh and punishing, and other times he's all merciful and forgiving and compassionate. But of course, all of these are representative of aspects of Hashem, the name, and are mere approximations because we acknowledge that we can never really define or comprehend God, okay? But according to Jewish faith, tradition, theology, liturgy, he very much can be known. So how do we know God? By engaging with him. So according to our scripture, the Jewish people entered into multiple covenants with God. The word covenant comes from the Hebrew word barit, which means a binding agreement. So the Jewish people have binding agreements with God. And the first covenant was between God and Abraham. Abraham is considered a patriarch of the Jewish people, and he's the first patriarch. So he's considered our father. We talk about Father Abraham. And in the book of Genesis, which is the first book of Torah, God, the Lord, had said to Abraham, quote, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. That's Genesis chapter 12. Now, the people, in turn, had to obey God and follow his rules. Now, a fundamental aspect of this covenant was an idea that at the time was really revolutionary because we're talking about 4,000 years ago, okay, based on the best estimates. Abraham and his descendants acknowledged that there is one God and only one God, and they promised to be faithful to this one and only God. So the concept of monotheism was introduced at this time to the Western world. Now, Zoroastrianism is also recognized as an early monotheistic faith, but in the Western tradition, we thank Father Abraham for this. And this is very much reflected in our daily practice. If there's one prayer that's central to Jewish practice, it's called the Shema. And Jews are obligated to repeat it twice a day. We repeat it on our holy days, and it's actually supposed to be the last words that we recite on earth. And it's a very simple, the beginning of the prayer is very short, very succinct, and Shema means hear. And the first word is hear, O Israel, God is our Lord, God is one. Now, the Jewish people have a further major covenant with God, and this occurs after the liberation of Hebrews from Egypt and their journey to Mount Sinai under Moses' leadership. So in Exodus 19, after Moses and the 12 tribes of Israel arrive at the base of the mountain, God calls Moses up the mountain and speaks to him and gives him the terms of the covenant, starting with the 10 Commandments, which I'm sure most of you have heard or know. You know, that's fundamental to both Judaic and Christian theology. But for Jews, there's so many more commandments from God that we're obligated to keep. There's actually 613 of them. And the Hebrew word is mitzvah, or good deed. So you can see it as an obligation or a commandment or an order, or you can also see it as something that I'm honored to fulfill, right? Depending on how you look at these mitzvahs. And many of these are ethical in nature, and they're written in our Torah, such as to give charity according to one's means. Or I know you mentioned this, Pratt, in one of our podcasts, do not bear a grudge. Another huge one that we hear a lot of talk of in our common parlance is to love the stranger. But probably the most popular one that everyone knows is love thy neighbor as thyself. And this has really morphed into the golden rule in secular terms. And that comes from Torah. And Rabbi Hillel, who's a very famous first century rabbi, said this is the greatest mitzvah that anyone can do. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, many more of our mitzvahs are about practical matters, such as how and what you can eat, how you treat employees, how you conduct business, how you treat your animals, how you conduct court proceedings. That's a huge topic in our Torah. It's no coincidence that there's so many Jewish lawyers out there, because we basically brought the law and the notion of legal systems with proceedings and rules and rights and responsibilities to the Western world. But that's a whole other podcast episode. So from a Jewish perspective, I can't understand who or what God is without discussing the relationship between God and human beings, because we have these eternal covenants and we are in fact his partners. So I will quote the Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory. He passed away a few years ago. He was the former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom. And he says, quote, "We believe that salvation comes through good deeds, not through faith. That's not to say that God isn't the fundamental motivation why you do things, but we believe that we have a personal responsibility for our actions and accountability to God. Jews believe that God expects you to do good in the world, that you are his partner." So if I had to strip it down to the simplest terms and say what I think is the one job of a Jew, I would say that it's to be God's partner here on earth by doing good deeds. Now, there's a little more to this as well. I would say, like any relationship or any partnership, it's not always easy or perfect, and it's not without challenges and struggles. And so I come back to Torah. In the book of Genesis, there's a story where one of our patriarchs, I mentioned Abraham, we have another patriarch, Jacob. There's a story in Torah in Genesis where he's wrestling all night with a mysterious angel who represents God. And Jacob successfully survives this encounter. And afterwards, his name is changed from Jacob to Israel. The translation of Israel is literally to struggle with God. So from the very beginning in our tradition, the people of Israel, the Israelites, the Jews, we are people who struggle with God. Now, of course, every Jew's relationship with God is going to be different. Ultimately, like, we hope and we trust in his ways, and we take comfort in the fact that everything comes from God and he's directing the entire universe. but it doesn't mean that we aren't allowed to question him. And on the contrary, that's part and parcel of what it means to be a Jew. Now, I guess I'll just wrap up. To me personally, I mean, that's a lot of theology. To me personally, I would say that God is like my steady. He's my companion. He's my constant companion. He's the one I talk to when things are rough, and hopefully the one I thank when things are good. And he's the one who knows what's in my heart better than I know myself. And he knows what's best for me better than I know myself. And so I rely on him to solve any problem I have. And I know that any blessing in my life comes from him. And so he's the one that I put all my faith and trust in above all else. So it's very simple for me.
That's beautiful, Christiane. Beautiful. And I mean, I'm sure Vikram would agree, like, there's so many parallels that we could draw between Judaism and Hinduism, or Sanatana Dharma, as we call it.
Yes.
Just a lot of the same principles and values and ethics and morals that we learn. It's the same. Just the customs, I think, are different. You know, some of the traditions are different, and that's fine, and that's beautiful. You know, those are the things that we love to learn about when it comes to other cultures. And we can gain a lot of nice perspective from that. But I think what you said is very much in line with what Sanatana Dharma preaches as well. So
absolutely.
And it feels great to get that perspective from you. Thank you for sharing this.
You know, broadly, I've felt, given what I've learned about different faiths and how they view God, is that there really is a lot of similarities across the board. Sure, there are differences in certain customs, certain traditions, but at the end of the day, when you look at the core of everything, it's more or less the same. And it is beautiful to hear from others about how they perceive God and how they worship God and how they imbibe that into their day-to-day lives. And so that was wonderful to hear from Christiane about that. So absolutely, 100% agree with you. And it's great to hear that and learn from that also.
And as she said, God is one. I think that was one of the points that I really liked, other than the service of people, was that God is one. And we, unfortunately, even though we're going to get into this later, but unfortunately, because of all the religions thinking that their own gods are prominent or whatever, they've kind of created their own God, and that has led to the world thinking that there's polytheism in that sense, because they are accepting that, oh, this other religion has their God, but mine is superior somewhere in their mind because of the ego. They think that, but there you are, you're creating a second God and then a third God just from your the way you think about it,
Right.
And unfortunately, that's the popular way of thinking. So even though everybody in their religion at the core believes that there's one God, from the worldwide perspective, there seems to be a polytheistic way of looking at it, which is actually not good.
Right. And that actually reminds me of that one core message and one dialogue in the movie Pike at the very end, when Amir Khan is having a debate with the Guru character, and he breaks down and he says, you know what? There are two gods. There's the God that is real, who loves, and then there's the God that people have made that is modeled off of what people are like, which is you give and take a little and this and that and this and that. And that's, I think, similar to the point that you are making, is that, in reality, there is one God that is all loving and all encompassing. And truthfully, we cannot even fathom what power, what energy, what God is like. But as humans, we try to explain stuff that we don't understand. And I think the concern becomes when we try to explain it and then we start believing some of it because we think that that is exactly what it is when it's hard to explain. If you get what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely.
So and then that's definitely where the ego and all that comes in, where it's like, I get it and I know how God is, and especially I know I'm straying a little bit, but it sometimes it also gets me when I hear of certain people that are they're saying, oh, this violates our religious thing, and this is offensive to God and stuff like that. And these people think that they can be the protectors of God and all that. But I always think that you, just a regular human being, just like any of us, you are going to protect that who has made this entire creation, that has made the entire world.
Who made you the spokesperson?
Who made you the spokesperson? So I'm always amused by that. And again, that goes along the lines of what you were hinting at. So
yeah, right. So going forward, I guess we'll get started with how the Vedic literature, specifically how the Vedas, and everything really emanates from the Vedas. We're going to have, the future episode, we'll talk about all the scriptures in detail. So in the Vedas, just like many other religions believe that God doesn't have a form. They say God is formless. Although I would at times maybe disagree, because I think somewhere either the guru or the prophet or the symbol or whatever, or the holy book or whatever it is that they keep on their altars at home is a representation of God. So I would say they worship those figures as God. So I would say that in some way or another there is a form, although not necessarily the way the Hindus perceive it to be. So so in Sanatana Dharma, there's from the Vedas, what we learn is that God has two aspects. And one is called the Nirguna, or the formless, as I've just mentioned, where we just believe that God is this energy, this abstract. We don't even know where he exists, but he's just there, and we can't give it we don't know how to conceive that. But that's a lot of the Vedas talks about the Nirguna form, Nirguna Brahman, as he's called. So there are three names also that we're going to talk about that God is referred to, and Brahman's the first one that I'd like to bring up. So there's the Nirguna Brahman, so the formless, attributeless, nameless, and then the Saguna form, with the God with form, name, and attributes. So in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, in the second chapter, in the third verse, it says, Brahman has but two forms, gross and subtle, mortal and immortal, limited and unlimited, defined and undefined. So God can be basically appearing in both these aspects. So the Vedas say this. And a lot of people do challenge, how can God, we believe God, doesn't show himself, but, maybe he empowers all the beings in this world through his energies. But as we understand from the most ancient scripture, it does say that God is formless, and when necessary, he can take form. And to take that thought forward, actually, Arjuna asks Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12. I'll just read this out. So Arjuna said, thus, those who worship you, ever steadfast, and also those who meditate on the unmanifest, or the Nirguna formless, imperishable Brahman, of the two types of seekers, who are the superior knowers of yoga? So who are the superior ones, the ones who worship the form, or the God with form, or the Saguna form, or the Nirguna Brahman? So Sri Bhagavan, or Krishna, responds, and he says, with mind established in me, ever steadfast in their devotion, endowed with the highest faith, those who worship me, they are, in my opinion, the best of yogis. Those who have restrained all their senses, even-minded everywhere, rejoicing in the welfare of all beings, meditate on the indefinable, eternal, all-pervading, and imperishable Brahman, they attain me alone. So he's basically saying that whether you meditate upon me in the form or without form, you're ultimately still coming to the same destination. You're still going to reach me, God. He goes on to say, greater is the difficulty. Now, this is a very key verse. Greater is the difficulty for those whose mind is set on the realization of the unmanifest, or the Nirguna Brahman, because the unmanifested is reached with difficulty by embodied beings. So Arjuna's actually, recognizing that, hey, there's God in form and God without form. Which one, what type of yogi is the best? And Krishna said, both are the same. But it's definitely going to be difficult even for the people of that time in the Dwapar Yuga. And now he was actually speaking futuristically for the people of the Kali Yuga and saying, how are they going to be able to focus their mind on something that has no form? It's going to be very difficult for them to comprehend the concept of God as an abstract. So how would they concentrate on God? So did you have some comments on this, Vikram?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to talk a little bit about the formless and the form aspects of God. When talking about myself and my personal experience, when I remember God and when I worship God, I don't actually think of God in a particular form. I think of God ultimately as being a type of universal energy. And that energy has the ability to manifest itself physically, as you were also talking about. But, when I kind of sit down and formally worship God, I worship the murtis, or the statues that we have, because sometimes there's a desire to see what we cannot see. Exactly. And, so I personally partake in thinking of God in both particular forms. Though I believe personally, ultimately, God is a formless energy that has the ability to take a particular form and come, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, but to come into a physical form at times where it's necessary.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard the term SAT-CHIT-ANANDA?
SAT-CHIT-ANANDA. I think I have, but in a very interesting way. So in the Krishna series, when I guess it's like morning or whatever, but Brahmaji is appearing. This is, I think, the first shot of the series. Brahmaji is appearing, and there's a verse that starts with that phrase, Satchidananda Rupaya, something like that.
Yes.
So yes, I've heard that phrase.
Yeah. So God is described as Sat-CHIT-ANANDA.
Yes.
So basically, especially for the formless, I think, what people can sort of gain some very minimal understanding is through this term. And when you break it down, it's Sat, Chit, and Ananda. And many saints and gurus have always used this or taken this term from the Vedas and highlighted it because people should understand that what it actually means. So Sat means supreme, eternal, absolute truth. And that is God. And when we say truth, it doesn't just mean telling the truth versus telling lies or honesty versus dishonesty in a worldly sense. Because that word is associated a lot in spirituality. I'm seeking the truth. I'm a truth seeker. It means that which was, is, and always will be. It's eternal. It's permanent. It'll never disappear. It'll never be not there. So that is what we mean by truth. Chit means consciousness or peak of intellect or the highest knowledge, somebody who possesses the highest of knowledge, who's the reservoir of knowledge, if you will, is a chit, so the purest of consciousness. And then ananda means happiness, joy, bliss, as we've mentioned in the past also. So SAT-CHIT-ANANDA, put together, the combination of the three terms, is how God is described in the Vedas. And that I thought was very beautiful and very simple for people to understand. We mentioned Brahman. Brahman is like God that you will not be either able to see at all, or it could be God in the form of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are the creator, sustainer, and destroyer by their portfolio, as most people know. And so God in that form is what we read about and learn about in the Puranas, the various stories, is Shiva and Brahma and Vishnu all interacting, and the different things that are happening at a higher plane or another realm altogether. So both are considered Brahman, right? But let's talk about the second name out of the three that I was going to talk about, and that is Bhagavan. And these three terms are, like I said, they all are names of the same one God, but it's just that they're distinctly different because they're describing a different aspect of God. So Bhagavan is often used to speak about when God descends into human-like form, even though his body is not of matter like ours is, and the five elements that make up our body, right? Ether, air, water, fire, and earth. So that's not what God's body is made up of. His body is transcendental. It's divine and spiritual in the way it's constructed. So and it's deathless. So they actually say that God, his body, his abode, his drama, divine play or leelas, his name, and the loyal saints that have been empowered by him, that are completely loyal to him and stand by the word of the scriptures and act by the word of the scriptures completely. Those are all one and the same. But specifically who we refer to as Bhagavan is like Lord Vishnu, who takes so many different incarnations to sustain and preserve and protect this world. And we know the different incarnations. We'll talk about that more in detail in a little bit. But I would like to explain the meaning of the word Bhagavan itself. That if I were to break it up, Bhaga actually means the one who possesses 6 qualities in an unlimited fashion. So Van means somebody who is the possessor of. So we often hear Dhairyavan, somebody who's courageous, or Balavan, somebody who has immense power or strength. So it is the 6 qualities or opulences that God has that in abundance, in unlimited fashion, is wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. But interesting thing is, a lot of people think that when God takes an avatar and comes to the world, that he is only there at that point in time, in that form, and he's nowhere else. And that's a little bit of a ignorant way of looking at it, or because we think that, okay, while he was doing this Leela, he was missing in his abode, or he's missing somewhere else. But what we come to know through the third name, which is Paramatma, is that he's ever present and essentially inside every single atom of the creation that he has created. So he's instilled himself into everything. Even the smallest grain of sand, he's within. What to say of living beings? So there's a Vedic shloka that says, Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. So the word Purna means full. So God is manifest everywhere in his fullest form with all his energies everywhere. So that's the perspective we should have so that we can understand and gain love and respect for everything around us and be more grateful for what we have and how God has given us his grace through these great scriptures in order for us to understand somewhat, little bit about him. There's also the other shloka that says, that gives the God the oneness, even though he's manifested in so many different forms, and people tend to differentiate between those forms and pick their favorites and say, oh, this one's more superior to that one and all that stuff. That's where the confusion starts, and really the main understanding is lost. And this Rigved shloka says, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. So it says that truth or God is one, but the sages call that truth in many names.
No, absolutely. I think, it's interesting to get the definition of each of these different ways of referring to him, because I feel sometimes people use these terms without understanding exactly what they mean. And actually, I learned something in terms of the definition of Bhagavan. I did not think about it as you had explained it. So that is definitely very very insightful. But I think each of these defines exactly, in terms of what our understanding is, up to a point of what God is. And of course, there must be so many more facets of God that we can't even comprehend.
Yeah.
And I think that actually going back to another point you were talking about polytheism, right? Polytheism. So if we look at Hinduism, if we look at Sanatana Dharma, so that particular viewpoint comes from the fact that we have different quote unquote gods that represent different things. You have Ganesha, the remover of obstacles. You have Goddess Lakshmi, goddess of wealth and prosperity. Goddess Saraswati, goddess of knowledge and education and all that kind of stuff. And then you have Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. I mean, Brahma's not really worshipped, but Vishnu and Mahesh, the preserver, the destroyer. But so people say, oh, Hinduism is a polytheistic religion. But again, it goes to the point where, we give these physical forms to God, right? And God has taken these different forms to bring forth certain ideals, bring forth certain teachings that we can learn from. And that's why we worship him. But if we go back to the source of all of these gods, ultimately it is one and the same.
Right.
So I would say that at the end of the day, Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, is not polytheistic, but we look at God in different ways, and based on what resonates the most with us, we give God a form and we worship those forms, and people believe it to be polytheistic. But ultimately, I think it's monotheistic.
Yeah, and to take that point further, what we're doing is we're giving every aspect of our life that divinity, right? Money, education, knowledge and various aspects of our life, our relationships. Everybody, as soon as you realize that God is within everybody as the Paramatma, meaning the super soul or the soul of the souls, the highest of the soul, is actually your companion in every lifetime and is also within every being, that's supposed to teach us that that divine is in everything. So we have to respect and appreciate everything around us. And I think that that's the great teaching that we get, is that if God is in a blade of grass and in the trees and in the birds and, the animals and everything, we look at the world completely differently, and that's the great learning lesson that we get. So the third name is Paramatma. So the one who is within everybody. And when we say within, I think people start to wonder, oh, scientifically, can I go into my body and see my soul, the Atma or the Paramatma? Is it visible? Well, see, that's again going back to the Nirguna aspect of God, which is the formless. And even if you were to, I have heard that the description of the soul or the Atma is that it's very, very, very microscopic. It's not that there's nothing there, but it's so microscopic that you can't see it. No matter what type of instrument you may use, what type of technology you may use, it's invisible. But it's very much visible because we're living, breathing, talking, walking, doing all the activities that we're doing, all thanks to the power of that soul being within. Because as soon as the soul leaves us, it's a lifeless body.
Absolutely.
So that Paramatma and Atma's combination that is sitting inside our sacred heart is what's giving us the ability to act and to perceive, and the intuition and all of these, the intellect and, all, just for us to function as people in this world. We need that energy inside us.
Right. Absolutely. And, it's also interesting, when a lot of people refer to God, they often refer to God as He.
Yes.
They give God
I think we've made that
gender.
mistake already several times.
Yeah. I've been careful to try not to do it, but I may have still slipped up. But the reality is that God also does not have any gender.
That's right.
Gender is also, because because in the world we see that, we try to apply that to the concept of God. But again, even when people say He, or it's more like an it, I would say, because we don't know what God exactly is.
I mean, it's a product of what we've been trained to think, how our minds are conditioned since birth. And it's a patriarchal society, let's face it, So majority of the religions also refer to their gods in a masculine form, or masculine manner, I should say. So, I think it's just what comes to us naturally. But I 100% agree with Vikram. And I think we mentioned that in the last episode as well, that, when we talk about Shiva Shakti, the masculine and feminine energies come together to create everything and to sustain everything. We have to understand that, that was the purpose of that, is to show us that, I'm not one thing, and you can't really tell me, nobody can say that God is only one thing or only one gender or only in one form or anything like that. One of the things, Vikram, that we get knocked on, especially as Hindus, is idol worship. And other religions look at it in a sort of a, way of, they kind of look down upon it, and there's some disdain, it seems like, and they question, what are they, what are they getting out of worshiping an idol? They think we're literally worshiping something that's made of stone or whatever material. So what's your perspective on idol worship? And How do you justify it?
Right. So there's two components to that. One is the surface level component, and one is the deeper component. And I think the point that you mentioned about people looking at it with disdain, that connects to my surface level point. So at a surface level, we were talking about how God is formless, but God can manifest in many different forms. And within Hinduism, we tend to worship all of those different forms. We want to be able to see it in something tangible. And that's where the idols come in, right? Because we want to express, and there's many ways to do it, right? Different faiths have different ways of worshiping something. We worship the murtis. If you look at Sikhism, the Guru Granth Sahib is, on a shrine, and
Right.
that is, worshipped. So, we all worship things in different forms, and for Hindus, having that kind of physical, I guess, look to God and the different aspects of God, that's the idols that we worship, and that's the surface level. But I would take that a little deeper, and I would say that God is in everything, whether it is a piece of paper or a wall, this microphone, this laptop, what have you. So whether we're worshiping an idol or worshiping a desk, we're worshiping, this is all creation. This is all creation.
Right.
So it really shouldn't matter whether, what is being worshipped, because God is in everything and everything is created by God.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the deeper level thing, is that, and I think, at least that's how I've looked at it, is that within this statue, it's a representation of that which I cannot understand. And so I bow before that, because I want to be able to see it, because otherwise with my plain eyes, I cannot.
Right. And it certainly helps us when we're meditating, right? Like when there's some picture or murti or something we can concentrate on. I think it's a focal point for us to tune our mind to, in order to have a little more focused meditation, or perhaps japa, or whatever practice we're doing. It really helps us kind of connect with the divine in that sense.
Correct. Because, correct. Because, when I do that, when I try to do Gyaan and try to think of it, it's hard for me to do Gyaan of something formless.
Absolutely. That's the thing. Even Krishna said it in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Like, this is going to be a lot harder if you're going in that direction, the Nirguna direction.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. It gives a point of focus.
Right. In the temples, the idols that we see, the murtis that we see, those, as per Vedic rituals, the priests have done prayers during the installation process of that murti. It's called prana pratishtha. Pratishtha means installation, and prana means invoking that Holy Spirit into that murti. Mm-hmm. So as per the Vedic mantras and rituals, the idols that we see in the temples, I'm just trying to explain the differentiation, because we have idols at home and we have idols in the temple. So just kind of bringing that little bit of a differentiation. That's why, going to the temple has some merit, because those are prayed to and worshipped in a totally different manner than what we do at home. Sometimes we have our little temples at home, and hopefully we pray every day, but sometimes there may be a day or two that goes by, you don't even go there, So, but in the temples, the worship is ongoing throughout the day, every day, So I just want to highlight this, because a lot of people say, well, if God is within us, or God is in our home, which is all true, why should we go to the temple? and worship him there. But there's that differentiation where not only is God worshipped every day, and his garments are, everything is cleaned, and everything is, newly decorated, the deities are decorated every day, but you're also worshiping along with so many other devotees at the same time. So you get a wonderful positive vibe. There's a little bit of a community vibe there. So there's a beauty to collective prayer, I feel. And it uplifts me, and I'm sure Vikram also you. We all feel good when we go to Monday, right?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, home is home, and on a day-to-day thing, I mean, the best way to kind of connect is you have your place of worship at home, and you do that, right?
Yeah.
But the feeling of going to a mandir and doing it is something else entirely. I mean, I don't even know how I can explain how, when I go to the mandir, how I feel. Just the amount of peace and just the tranquility. It's a whole different vibe. It's almost like you just go in there and any worry you have is wiped away. Mm-hmm. I often wish I could just sit there for hours and hours and hours, which is not, actually possible. But that's the feeling that I have when I go to a mandir. And yes, that
even
is
the food. Even the food is
even
offered
the oh yeah, absolutely.
It's offered to God first. In our homes,
Yes.
when we're hungry, we don't even think, we just go and eat, right? Here, it's like this this food has been consciously prepared.
Yes.
By the people who are preparing it also are chanting, praying, or they have God on their mind when they're doing it. And I heard that by itself is an incredible effect on the food.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also, when you go to a mandir, you never know what you'll encounter. Recently, I went to the ISKCON temple here in Potomac, and it was a random afternoon, and it was just me and my wife Shefali and my sister and my daughter Devi, and we were all there, and there was one other person, and he was a kind of a saintly looking. He's on the younger side, but a very saintly looking person, and he took out a flute, and he started playing the flute with that musical instrument.
Oh, wow.
And oh my gosh, he played so beautifully. It took that atmosphere, which was already amazing, and it just enhanced it into something else. I mean, it felt like you're in Vrindavan and you're hearing, Krishna play the flute. I mean, it was, and where you can experience that only by going to a mandir. You never know what you will encounter there.
Absolutely. And there's kirtan going on. And
yes.
Yeah. So you're compelled to, even the people who don't regularly, they said, like I said earlier, God and his name are the same. The power of God is in his name. That's why we say in, the famous bhakti practice is to either sing or chant the holy name. We're compelled to do that when we're in that atmosphere, even if you don't do it on a regular basis, when you go there, that energy, you feel it, So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That was beautiful. So here are some questions, that most people sort of ask about God with, especially when there's adversity going on. Because I think when things are going fine, nobody's bothered, if they're paying attention to God, that's great. Or if they're thanking God for the good, experiences that they're having. If they're thanking God and saying, God, its credit goes to you, then that's wonderful. But most of the people believe that it's their, it's because of them that the good results are going. But then when adversity hits, that's when we see people complaining and finding somebody to blame. And I actually, what that made me realize, Vikram, there are very few atheists in the world. It's a good thing, probably. But I would say the reason I say that is because even the people who pose like they don't believe in God, right? They often question when adversity hits. Perhaps they don't worship, they don't, they're not inclined to do that, which is fine. But somewhere, when it comes to blaming, God is the punching bag. And that means you're giving God an identity. You're giving him credibility. And you're saying, why did God do this to me? Or why is God not showing up and helping? So somewhere inside us, intrinsically, because we are a fragment of him, I feel we have that intrinsic feeling that we have a relationship with a higher being, but it's just that our ego and all these veils of Maya are blanketing the pure soul and our pure understanding of how we should look at certain things and being able to accept whatever it is as grace. Even unfortunate things happen to teach us something.
Yes.
And there's even a positive that may come out of that.
Yes.
So there are many examples of things like this, right?
Yes.
But we have questions like, why should I believe in God, or like, is God involved in the world? Because we see all these things happening around us, and somewhere we're expecting an avatar to appear and clean up everything, or just so then we begin to think, if God is there, doesn't he care about us? How come he's not coming here when there's evil and suffering going on in the world? What would you say to something like that?
Yeah. So this is actually a multi-layered question.
Yeah.
So, when we talk about when we get frustrated and we blame God, so there's a couple of sides to this. So one is, it's good that we as human beings have someone that we can talk to, even if we're blaming them. We feel comfortable enough that we can talk to them and we can blame them and this and that. And I feel God is understanding of these sentiments because, one, how many millions, billions of people in the world do that on a daily basis, right? But I mean, it's good that there's something that people feel they can vent to, right? That's one part of it. Secondly, there's other aspects of this. There's, what has your karma been to bring about certain things? It might have been something that you've done in this life, and you're facing the result of that, right? Which has led to whatever frustration or challenge you're facing. It's possible that you did something in a previous life, and you're facing the consequence of that now. In one case, it's hard to know what you did. Another case, maybe you can trace it back. But with every negative, people always ask if there's a God who loves peace and wants us to be happy, why are we dealing with the suffering? I'd say the answer is actually a very simple one and a beautiful one. The reason is that if we do not know what pain is, if we do not know what suffering is, see, nothing lasts forever. Whether it's a good period or a bad period, everything ends. So if we're going through a bad period, and one day it's going to end, and something beautiful is going to happen, how do we, without getting to that beautiful thing, how do we truly believe in God? What I'm trying to say is that, I'll talk about me. I mean, there's been many points in my life where things have felt down, things have been hopeless. And I too, like most human beings, have questioned, why is this happening to me, right?
Right.
But I never lost faith. Yes, I would vent to God also, but I never lost faith. And then one day, maybe it took a year, maybe it took a couple of days, maybe it took, whatever. When that thing happened, to me, it reaffirmed the fact that God is there. Mm-hmm. It's just about the timing that God is there. So one has to go through some of this challenge so that when the beautiful thing happens, they can recognize that there is somebody that is looking after them.
Mhm.
If everything is going wonderfully, I mean,
Yeah.
sure, but then you also lose your humility. If everything is going beautifully,
Yeah.
you tend to take it for granted. So you have to kind of take some of those hits so that you can come back, gather your mind, and then realize that, okay, let's stay in this lane, and there is someone that's looking after me.
Right.
So why worship God is to keep that faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, that's when we realize also that we don't, I've realized over time, more and more and more that, there's very, very little that we control. At times we believe that, I'm in control of everything going on, or I can control everything that's going on. But then, we can't, we sometimes barely have any control over our own minds, let alone somebody else, or, how can we really control everything? So I believe, like, if things are not happening per my will or what I desire, right, then it's happening at the will of somebody else higher. And it's everybody's in the same boat. We realize nobody's having the perfect life. So everybody has a will or wills for some certain things to happen or their life to play out a certain way. And we realize very quickly that that's not how it's playing out. So then it's playing out as per some plan.
Right.
And that's when you have to, you slowly, when you actually do start understanding that, this world is imperfect, right? We're in an imperfect world. So we're perfect beings at the soul level, but we're in an imperfect world. So if we're in this world, we have to, like you said, face the adversity.
Right. And
that's going to come.
It's going to come. And the greatest learning comes from those periods of adversity. And
Yeah.
there's that statement that we often talk about, that focus on your karma, don't worry about the fruit of what you're going to do, right? And
the results.
I mean, results. So, I mean, it's difficult for people to imbibe that, but actually that phrase in itself in this context also is the perfect phrase, because like you said, a lot of things are really out of our control. And even if I look at my life and reflect on just some crazy things that have happened after some very challenging periods, of course I did what I can, but I also feel that what I did couldn't have brought upon such magnificent results. My karma could not have produced these results alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There has to be
divine intervention,
something more.
Yeah.
And almost all the challenges that I've faced have not been things that have resolved overnight. Some things took me at least 13, 14 years to get over. And then when I did, but I never lost my faith. And I would get frustrated, but I never lost my faith. And when that thing happened, it only emboldened me further to believe.
So your belief became stronger, I think, over time.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I've always believed that God is not there to punish. God is only there to teach. God doesn't, and there's so many examples in Hindu stories about, even some of the worst people having chances to redeem themselves.
Yeah.
And even after, let's say, these evil demons and stuff, even after they have, let's say, died at the hands of God, even then, they are it's considered an honor for them that they attained moksha right then and there. Right. And that's something. So it's so I feel I've been emboldened by adversity. Now again, it's not easy to be in adversity and keep an optimistic mind, but I feel that for my sanity, keeping that devotion and faith helps, and it has helped tremendously.
And I think that's why I promote personally doing some practice every day, so that we stay in that mode of worship and that mode of devotion and bhakti, because I think it's not easy for us at that moment to have the presence of mind to think positively and all that, unless we're doing things like that. It's just like Krishna, who says, at the last moment of your life, if you think about me, you will get moksha. So he makes it seem like, oh, it's very simple, just think about me at the end. But it's not that simple, because we haven't practiced thinking about him. So that's something that I think can aid us, or help us kind of, accept the situation no matter how dire it seems at the time. Because we do believe that when something really outside of the ordinary happens, then we get rattled and we don't know how to gather ourselves.
Right. And I've also felt that whenever I found resolution to those challenges, I talked a little bit about timing.
Yeah.
I felt that whatever I needed to learn out of that experience, I learned. And that's why it made sense that whatever I was then able to gain, it was the right time to gain it. Right. If I had gotten it too soon, I perhaps would not have been worthy of whatever that nice thing was.
Exactly. Here's another story, actually. I don't know all the details around it, but I do remember just like the basic story is, there's a farmer who has this horse just randomly shows up in his farm, right? And the neighboring farmers and everybody are like, oh, you have this horse that just, you got for free, basically. Otherwise we trade and buy horses. So he's like, so they're basically saying, oh, you're so blessed. It's the greatest thing that could happen to you. And he's like, okay. He kind of had this like even keeled look at things. He never was too high or low on things. So he's like, whether it's good or bad, time will tell, right? So then at some point, that horse is like a little out of control, and the son of the farmer decides that he wants to sort of train up the horse and get it trained up and calm it down and be able to ride it and everything. And what happens is that boy gets kicked off. The horse gets throws him off, and he breaks his leg, right? Somebody comes and says, oh my God, the same people who said it was a blessing to have that he had the horse now said it's such a misfortune that you have this horse. Look what happened to your son, right? The farmer's like, oh, yeah, I don't know if it's misfortune or fortune, but it happened, And then what happens is the king in that area of that area, they're about to go to war somewhere with another kingdom, neighboring kingdom or something, right? And they're having people within a certain age, all males, just like they do. They're recruiting soldiers to go fight, and his son would fall in that category, right? And then because he had a broken leg, he couldn't fight in the war, where he could have lost his life, right? So when you look at sometimes like there's a blessing in disguise in even a misfortune or an unfortunate situation. The boy could have lost his life had he gone to war, but now he cannot go to war because he can't walk.
Right.
So some stories like these, I think we can really gain some good perspective and see that, it's not doom and gloom when something happens that we consider unfortunate.
Absolutely. And I think the main thing people should always think about is that thing that I mentioned about nothing lasts forever, right? If you're let's say you're having great success, that's great, but don't take your success for granted, because the slightest slip up can mess everything up. Similarly, if you're finding it challenging to get to, let's say, a certain point in life, part of the joy is to keep applying yourself and keep doing what you're supposed to do, keep being honest. You will get the push from the higher power to get to where you need to get to. And the level of satisfaction when you achieve what you want to, so to speak, is something else after you go through a period of challenges. And then you also realize that nothing comes easy.
No. Another point that I actually want to talk about is like, as we realize that we're not in control of all the things that we believe we're in control of, is we start somewhere, either you can be reckless and go off the deep end and say, I do control everything, but then you're just lying to yourself. Or you can take that as fact and say, okay, I'm in, somebody else is in control. I'm going to live my life the best way, like you said. And I think one of the key things is humility. That's what we have to develop. Because the other day I watched a video of this a Babaji that is very popular right now on YouTube, and people come and talk to him. And this gentleman was like, "Oh, I don't have any. I'm a very honest person. I have no ego. I have no this. Why are these things happening to me?" He comes to the saint and asks him the question, and he's like, "Right there is the example of you having an ego." Right. Because if you're saying, "I have no ego, I have no issues, I'm a completely clean character person," then you're right there thinking very highly of yourself. So the whole, the teachings of our great scriptures is through this process of spiritual seeking, thin that ego out completely. Try your best not to always feel like you're, I'm the one who's achieving this. I'm the one who's doing this. I'm the one who's doing. Yes, through it's being done. Just like Krishna told Arjuna, even if you don't fight the war, these people are going to die anyway. So if you think about it like, hey, you're acting as an instrument of mine, through which I'm going to the Kauravas are going to die. That's how, when we start thinking more along those lines, that hey, I have to use my life and this body as an instrument for the divine, and let him give me the grace so that I can act right and do right and think right and speak right and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think growing up, I think the first thing I ever learned from all the religious shows that I watched was the teaching about ego, and how too much ego can basically drive you to work against yourself. And so, I've always strived to try and control that. Not always possible,
Yeah.
Ego's always there, but but at least recognizing it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think really ego is an aspect of Maya, the illusory power of God, that we tap into very quickly because, we want that sense of like, oh, I did this, or the praise or whatever we get, right? But really that curtain is what's separating us from totally being able to see God. And I know it's not an instantaneous thing for everybody. Some people may be blessed to be, to kind of like the light bulb goes off any given instant. But for many of us, it's a process. So I think if we keep reminding ourselves daily that, hey, let me do my best to get through today without thinking negatively about somebody or thinking greatly of myself. Or a lot of people do, come and tell you that, hey, this was amazing what you did or what you said or how I sing and all that stuff, right? But I often just try to find a way to put it behind me and not hold on to such thoughts.
Right. I always used to. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'm just saying that because those things can accumulate, and then an ego just gets like a big snowball, and it's really difficult to melt that snowball.
Right. And I always, whenever I do a play, I always tell people, don't tell me anything good that I may have done. Only tell me what was the problems.
Right.
I don't want to hear about if I did well or anything. I just want to know what I didn't do well.
Oh. That's an interesting way to think about it. So here's another question that most people, basically the question's formulated from how people tend to sometimes critique God, or say, in different avatars, God has done different leelas. So based on that, is it right for us to question God's ways?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely right for us to question God's ways, but it's also incumbent upon us to try and understand why certain things happened the way they did. I mean, if you look at a lot of our stories, especially certain aspects of things that may have happened in different avatars that are considered controversial, people have a lot of questions. I think one of the most, I guess, kind of controversial things that comes up that I hear about is, in the Uttarakhand of Ramayana, a lot of people express concern or anger about, Devi Sita was pregnant and Sri Ram sent her off, after listening to some things that people said, the Praja said, and he took that decision. Sita Mata herself, she finds out what he's going through because Sri Ram is very upset. So she finds out and she goes to him herself and she says, there's not even a question here. You are the king. You have to listen to the Praja. And I'm going to make this decision to go. Now, people question this, but the way I look at it is, because I've thought a lot about it, is there any other way that it could happen? I don't know, because we don't know of any other alternative. But Sri Ram, Vishnu was here in the avatar of Sri Ram, bound by the laws of this earth. Human beings have to make very, very difficult decisions, and not every decision is an ideal decision. Sometimes you have to pick, between two evils, right? Mm-hmm. And he, in that human form, picked what he felt was appropriate to do. And it's important to note that he did so reluctantly. It was not like he was happy making that. But if he was trying to make the point within this avatar broadly that in human life, sometimes you have to renounce the things that are most closest to you if you have a big responsibility. If it's something for the greater good, then you have to make that tough decision.
Right.
I'm not saying
he was in the position of a king, right? So
he was in the position of a king, so he had that thing. And
right.
I'm not saying how I feel about the decision, but I'm just trying to present forward, kind of what the perspective may have been. And so it's things like that where, some people can question, and one should always question things. I've always believed one should always question things. Yeah. But and no one should really look down upon anyone questioning anything. That's perfectly within, but one should also try to understand the perspective of why something may have happened also.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was going to say is, if you don't research and do your own homework and look deeper into why that particular incident may have happened that way, then you may never understand the true meaning, right? Because the way I look at it is, I agree with you, like confusion, questioning, all of that is correct. We're on the right path then. And we want to evolve, right? We are asking good questions and valid questions. That's absolutely fine. No blind faith is necessary here. The Santana Dharma never promoted somebody to believe blindly. But my only issue with when we say, can we question God? Yes, you can question anything. But somewhere we also need to understand that God is perfect. He's all perfect. And his planning and whatever he decides to do has to have a good reason behind it. So there's nothing wrong for us to question, but then if you're questioning and demeaning and doing outcry, like saying, oh, Ram did this, so why are we praying to him? Well, there you're promoting hate or some sort of negative emotion towards the God without actually knowing or studying or researching anything. So that's why I caution people that if God is not perfect, then who are we looking up to? Who are we trying to reach? We can't be imperfect and say, I want to reach a larger imperfect being. We have to first of all understand that we are perfect in true nature. Our soul is that of perfection. Otherwise, that's why we're called a fragment of God or Amsha of God. So if we're an Amsha of God, then we must be perfect as well. We just don't realize our perfection. So once we realize our perfection, I think the questions go out the window, because there are no questions left at that point. You're
Right.
pretty much your third eye that we spoke about last time that Shiva has. We don't have a physical third eye, but that third eye within us, once that's opened, then we're looking at the world completely differently.
Right. And on this point that I was talking about with regard to Uttarakhand, I mean, people
it's a great example because that's the one I hear the most.
Yeah, but what people also don't realize is that there's a backstory to this, which you might remember the specific names, but I know that around the time of either Devas or Sangram or the
Vishnu was
Sagar
cursed.
Yes, because some guru's wife had hit some asurs or something, and so then the guru cursed Lord Vishnu that just like you've separated me from my wife, you're gonna have to face the same thing. So Sri Ram was also compelled to take that decision to fulfill the thing that bhakt of his that curse that bhakt of his gave him. So
and you see
people have to realize that.
You see what God can do for his disciples, for his devotees, is he becomes their servant. He says, no sin can ever touch God. He doesn't have to be bound by any curse, right? He can just say, forget this. I'm not even going to take this on me. But because somebody has devoted their life in worship to him, he says, I will take this on. Because I don't want, and he's upholding the value of the curse that these yogis, these great sages have the power to give, and saying, I myself am not exempt from this. I'm not going to make myself exempt from this. But at the same time, like they say, God is in the world, right? He's within everybody. He's within his creation, but he's also unaffected by it. He says that in the Gita. I'm part of everything. At the same time, none of this really affects me. I'm not suffering. Coming back to the SAT-CHIT-ANANDA point, So he's always bliss. He's always, but yes, in Rama avatar and certain avatars, he will show a human side just to say that, because in that avatar, he wanted to show a more human-like form, human-like personality, where he does feel emotions and sadness and very little anger, but sadness mostly,
Right. And to teach mankind that in the face of adversity, what you should do and how eventually a human being can conquer someone like Ravan.
Right.
If your intention is correct, if you're on the right path, you can, conquer somebody that has all the power in the universe.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
And every time period is different, right? The situation, the social norms, everything changes from one major time period to another, what we call yugas, So God has decided to descend in a particular form to enact a particular role, to show his leelas in a different manner and to teach humanity dharma in a different way that would suit that time period. Krishna says in the 4th chapter, verses 7 and 8, he says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam srajamyaham, which means whenever there is a decline in righteousness or dharma and an increase in unrighteousness, O Arjuna, at that time I manifest myself on earth. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So he says, to protect the righteous, to annihilate the wicked, and to reestablish the principles of dharma, I appear on this earth age after age. So Krishna is pretty much laying it out there that, hey, I let people be until they have made this world so toxic, or until some force makes it so toxic that it's unbearable at that point. That's when I appear. But the interesting thing is, we should not take that to mean God does not appear, or God has to only appear in this very powerful form where he's going to start destroying everything, right? We can tell from our Puranas that great sages, saints, people who have led bhakti movements for the betterment of people in Kali Yuga have all come peacefully. The catalyst who essentially ended up starting the Hare Krishna movement was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who they say was Krishna himself, with the feelings or the heart of Radha inside him.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he showed humanity the way of being peaceful. He said, in this avatar, I will not take up arms. I will not take up weapons. So it's a more merciful, peaceful avatar. So we should also understand that whatever the need of the hour is, that's how God is going to come. Jesus did the same thing too. He was here to heal people. He tried to bring the spirit into his disciples. And he never fought anybody or raised his fist against anybody. So I feel like the modern day avatars that have manifested or have been empowered by God, like Mahatma Gandhi also, have taught us, let's all try to be peaceful and spread the holy name, or do everything, in a more nonviolent manner. So I think this may be what was required for this time period, but avatars have come, like I said, in various forms, with various moods, but they're all trying to teach us essentially the same thing, and that is developing that love for the divine. So going a little deeper into this concept of avatars, avatars can be, even though they all are capable of being full, like we said, Purnamidam earlier, they can be, if we wish to categorize them a little bit. So the different types of avatars, and this comes from my Guruji's book called Liberation from Karma and Rebirth that he wrote. So the basic avatar is called Amsha. So Amsha means part manifestation, like Hanuman is an Amsha of Lord Shiva. We said that in the last episode. So some energies of God are instilled into this being, and that we can also apply to ourselves. So we are Amshas. We're part manifestations of God. We have some qualities, very, very minimal, but we have some qualities of the divine in us, which manifests perhaps whenever we use that for the right causes. And the next category is called Vibhuti avatar. Vibhuti means glory of God. So this glory can manifest in man, animals, nature, in all of creation. That which creates awe and wonder and which remains unfathomable or indescribable, we treat as the glory of God. So some such glories are described by Lord Krishna in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled Vibhuti Yoga. So among the Vedas, Krishna says, I am the Samaved. right? Among the gods, I am Indra. Among the senses, I am the mind. I am the consciousness in the living beings. Among mountains, I'm Meru. So he says, even among the greatest warriors, I'm Ram. And among the greatest yogis, I'm Shiva. So Lord Krishna is at that time saying, the highest form of something that you can think of, that's me. That's one of my attributes. That's one of my glories. So this is called a Vibhuti avatar. And a Mahatmya avatar is a sudden manifestation of God for a specific purpose and can manifest in any form or place. So quite often we see like the evolutionary ones from like the aquatic to the mammal and then eventually human being. We've seen the 10 incarnations of Vishnu. Matsya avatar, Kurma avatar, they're just there for that specific purpose. They don't have a long duration of time that they're doing this, and they do their job and they move on. So there's the Mahatmya avatar. Now, a Yuga avatar. A Yuga avatar is one who descends with a message for a particular age or who creates a new age. Some Yuga avatars come for a whole Yuga or age, such as the present Kali Yuga, which extends over 432,000 human years. Within this Kali Yuga, there are ages which extend over a period of 1,000 or 2,000 years, and some Yuga avatars may come for one of these ages within an age. Jesus, the Son of God, is an example of a Yuga avatar. A Yuga avatar who descends from the bosom of God and enters into a physical vesture is always a divine being. Strictly speaking, such a one requires no womb to manifest, but usually descends through a humble, pious couple. Such a descent is called a virgin birth. Possessed with the love and power of God, such an avatar is recognized as such by highly evolved souls. In modern times, Paramahamsa Ramakrishna was recognized as a Yuga avatar. Then we have a Maha avatar. A Maha avatar is an incarnation of cosmic intelligence. His appeal is to the mind, whereas the appeal of a Yuga avatar is to the heart. A soul who attains infinite consciousness realizes that the world can be redeemed and manifests infinite love and compassion toward all beings. Even after departing from the body, such a soul works for thousands of years through a divine body. In Lord Buddha, we find an example of an evolving consciousness which attained infinite consciousness or enlightenment and became a door for many souls to attain the same state. Individual consciousness, when it attains superconsciousness, is capable of attaining mukti or nirvana, but this is the freedom of that individual soul only. A Mahavatar becomes the way for all humanity to attain such awareness. Now we come to Leela Avatar. A Leela Avatar is God coming in a supraphysical body, which is not unlike our human body, but it is human in appearance while maintaining a completely divine state. According to the Bhagavad Gita, the Leela avatar, like any of God's avatars, comes for the restoration of Dharma, and such an avatar knows the past, present, and future of all evolution and of everyone, though no one is capable of fathoming him in full. Krishna says, Arjuna, you and I have passed through many births. I know them all while you do not. And an example of Leela avatar, it is, according to the Puranas, among the trinity of Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, it is Lord Vishnu alone who takes incarnation. Among his incarnations, 10 are generally acknowledged, although 21 are described in the Bhagavatam. Among these, Sri Ramachandra and Sri Krishna alone are considered to be Leela avatars. And the last one we come to is Purna avatar, full manifestation. And there has only been one of those that we know about, and that is Lord Sri Krishna, because he embodied everything. All the aspects of God he put on display. A Purna avatar is an incarnation who is the fullest manifestation of God. He is the culmination and embodies all the divine characteristics of the various types of avatars. So that's how we come to see how we can sort of classify these avatars in some manner. Although I don't promote any sort of divisiveness when it comes to this. Don't say one is more supreme or powerful than the other, because that's where we go wrong. Vikram, did you want to speak about the kalas?
Yes, absolutely. So when we talk about kalas can be translated to mean qualities, I would say. And each avatar has a certain amount of kalas that define it. What is kala? So let's talk about that a little bit first. Kala is what's referred to as the Tej Ansh, meaning the inner light, I guess I would describe it. It's a little abstract concept, but I try to boil it down. It's like an inner light, inner enlightenment, inner ability to absorb certain things, right? So that is what a kala is in this case. So human beings have up to 5 kalas. This is the basic human being. You keep going one step up. 6 kalas is a slightly more knowledgeable human being. 7, slightly more knowledgeable human being. When you get to 8, that's oftentimes refers to a lot of the saints that have tremendous amount of knowledge. After the number 8, so actually in total, let me say that there's 16 kalas. Okay. After the number 8, the human body does not have the ability to absorb that stage that's required. After that, it goes into an entirely divine power spectrum, I would say. Now, we're talking about the avatars. So some of Bhagavan Vishnu's avatars, such as Narsingh or Vara, which were, I guess you could say, animal-based avatars, right? Vara was a boar. Narsingh was not clearly defined, but had some qualities of a lion, some qualities of a man. These have 10 to 11 kalas in them, right? But when you get to something like Sri Krishna had all 16 kalas, complete divine, complete Godhead. So this is kind of how the breakdown of kalas is. So each avatar had a different amount, 10 onwards, 10 kalas onwards, but Sri Krishna is considered to be the one that had every single kala in it. So that's kind of the simple breakdown of it.
Wonderful. Thank you. So this brings us to the conclusion of our discussion. It was great having this discussion with you, Vikram. It was
likewise
very informative. And here we are at the at the end of March almost, and we have some holy days to highlight. So March 1st, starting with the very first day, we have Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Jayanti. Okay, and we know how great of a personality he is. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsaji his name was Ramakrishna Chattopadhyay, was an Indian Hindu mystic. He was a devotee of the goddess Kali, but adhered to various religious practices from the Hindu traditions of Vaishnavism, Tantric, Shaktism, and Advaita Vedanta, as well as Christianity and Islam. That's interesting. He founded the organization that is known today as the Ramakrishna Order, and he was the guru of the great Swami Vivekanandaji, who introduced the profound Vedantic wisdom and concepts like yoga to the West. March 8th, we had International Women's Day. And I'm mentioning this because women have always played an important role in any tradition, in any religion, and they should all be revered and respected for that. Their innate qualities they possess, such as empathy, compassion, and the nurturing nature, have made them great contributors for upholding strong spiritual values through human civilization as we know it. This is one that Christiane wanted me to mention, or she would have done it if she was here. It's called Purim, which was on March 13th and through 14th. It's a 2-day holiday. And the Purim story takes us back to the extremely vast and powerful Persian Empire of approximately 500 years ago in the 4th century BCE. Jews were a minority group scattered amongst the Persian people and immersed in their culture. The empire's king had a beauty pageant to choose his wife. He chose a beautiful young orphan named Esther. She was Jewish, but no one knew this, including the king. because she hid her identity because of widespread Jew hatred. The prime minister of the empire hated the Jews and ordered a decree that they should all be killed on the 13th day of the Jewish month of Adar. Queen Esther called on all the Jews in the empire to fast and pray for 3 days, and then she went uninvited to the king, which was an extremely bold action because going to the king uninvited was punishable by death. She disclosed her Jewish identity and the plot to annihilate the Jews. This gamble and courage paid off as the king answered her pleas and canceled the evil decree. Esther is the heroine of the Purim story, with a tremendous legacy in Jewish history as she ensured the survival of her people. So in the modern era, on Purim, and I'd like to spell that Purim, we read the book from the book of Esther, or the Megillah. You have maybe heard the expression, quote, the whole Megillah, unquote, which basically means the entirety of something as we read the entire Megillah aloud every Purim. We also give food and money to the poor and celebrate the festive, almost carnival-like holiday by wearing costumes, drinking alcohol, dancing, and celebrating the fact that we were saved from annihilation 2,500 years ago in ancient Persia. Also on March 14th, there was Holi, which I'm sure, I don't know if all the Hindus know the story. I just think they think it's a festival of colors and just throwing powder at each other. And they have fun, they eat and they dance and to Bollywood songs and all that. But I hope people know the actual story behind it. If not, I'll just say it briefly. There was a boy named Prahlad, who was a great devotee of Vishnu, and his father, Hiranyakashipu, was a demon who was not in favor of his son worshipping anybody other than him. And Prahlad was a great devotee of Lord Vishnu, and which eventually leads to the Narsimha avatar manifesting to destroy his father. But in the process, but before it gets to that point, Hiranyakashipu is trying every option he knows in the book to kill his son. And one of the methods he thought of was his sister Holika, a demoness, had a boon from Brahma that said she could never be burned by fire. So he makes her sit on a pyre where there's all this wood stacked up, and he wants to light it on fire and have his son Prahlad sitting on her lap, thinking she'll be fine, but my son will burn to death. And the opposite happened because she was misusing that boon that she was given. So Holika burned, and I believe she sort of exploded like fireworks into different colors, and her ashes were in different colors when she was released from that cursed life. So that's why I think we have the different colors, the powder that we play Holi with. But Holi is a great festival, and we always look forward to that around the springtime. Lakshmi Jayanti. So Goddess Lakshmi was also on the March 14th, and she emanated from the Sagar Manthan. So in short, when the demons and demigods were doing the churning of the ocean, out of which many things came, Goddess Lakshmi also emerged from that. And she became the consort of Lord Vishnu after that. And I mentioned Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gauranga, who is an incarnation of Radha and Krishna together. It was his birthday as well. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Jayanti on March 14th. March 17th is Chhatrapati Shivaji Jayanti. Shivaji Maharaj was deeply spiritual and considered himself a servant or a disciple of his guru Samartha Ramdas. He was known for his unwavering devotion to Lord Hanuman and his dedication to protecting the righteous or the dharmic people. As fate would have it, he would leave his mortal body behind on the auspicious day of Lord Hanuman's birthday. So Hanuman Jayanti was when Shivaji Maharaj left the world. He was the great Maratha warrior, as everybody knows. So his mother Jijabai played a crucial role in shaping his character and devotion to God, narrating stories from the Mahabharata and Ramayana. He is seen as a protector of Hindu culture and identity, encouraging the use of Marathi and Sanskrit in official matters and promoting Hindu festivals and traditions. Of course, he lived during the Mughal Empire, so he was known to have fought many wars against the Mughals and even became victorious in several of them. March 17th is also St. Patrick's Day, the day that honors the man who brought Christianity to Ireland. March 28th is Jamaat ul Wida for the Muslims. So Muslims ask for Allah's forgiveness and they give to the poor on this day. They offer prayers and they believe that prayers made on this day will be answered. Muslims believe giving to the poor on Ramadan will bring them wealth and blessings during the year and in the future. This is a chance for Muslims to say goodbye to Ramadan, which they've been doing for about a month, I believe, as Eid approaches. So Eid is celebrated on March 31st. So Eid Mubarak to all the people who are celebrating that. March 30th is Gudi Padwa or Yugadi, which is really the Hindu New Year. And it comes from the Sanskrit word yug, which means era, and adi means the beginning. So the beginning of a new era, thus signifying the start of a new era. So according to the Hindu lunar calendar, Yugadi marks the first day of the Chaitra month. Some other things tied to Yugadi is creation of universe. It is believed that on this day, Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, began the creation process, making Yugadi a time of new beginnings. It's also springtime, so it's a start of a new season also, changing of the nature around us. March 31st is the last day of the month, is celebrating Matsya Jayanti, Matsya Avatar. The Matsya Avatar is credited with saving the world from massive flood, guiding King Manu's ark or boat through the waters and ensuring the survival of humanity and the Vedas. So the Vedas were safely guarded during that cataclysmic moment. We also have an interesting deity called Jhulelal, which is revered in India and in Pakistan, apparently. So Jhulelalji is a folkloric deity and the most revered deity of Sindhi Hindus in India and Pakistan. He's believed to be an incarnation of Varuna, the Hindu god of water, and the Indus River. Jhulelal serves as a binding force for the Sindhi community, particularly those who were displaced during the partition of India. So that covers the month of March. I'm going to, as we always do, we're going to end with some words of Gyaan. Guru gives Gyaan from Guruji's satsang, Sadguru Sant Keshavadas ji.
Thus you visualize the flame in an empty vessel, emptied of ego and dualities. There the flame becomes the Saguna. When you open the eyes, that flame has spread itself as Vyapnoti iti Vishnu in the form of this whole Vishwa. Vishwa. Say that? Vishwa means Virat, or Vishwa means the whole cosmos is the body of God. Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha Sahasrakshaha Sahasrapat Sabhumim Vishvato Vritva Atyatishtat Dashangulam. That is how the Purusha Sukta explains that the Supreme Truth has 1,000 heads, 1,000 arms, 1,000 feet, 1,000 eyes. Just to say that infinite, infinite, infinite. All this is God. So this earth planet is his waist. And above this the space, the tummy. Like that the celestial heavens, the bosom. Like that it goes. The upper lokas, the luminous ones. Therefore its entire cosmos is the body of God. And inside that all-pervading truth, we are all driving our cars, flying our aeroplanes, everything in the tummy of God. And just like the little worms in a little fruit, in banyan tree, you have a little berry fruit. When you pluck that and open, there are teeny million seeds inside every little. Like that, compared to these endless galaxies and countless constellations and innumerable universes that appear and disappear at a mere knit of the brow of our Father, Mother God, from every pore of his body, these universes emerge and merge back, emerge and merge back. Whether you go through the science or through the religious science. The same truth is same. You go through external search or internal, you will reach the truth. Because all this is nothing but truth. That is one of the most important points to remember, that God the personal means it need not be necessarily a man or a woman, even though we understand better that way. But this entire universe standing right in front of you is the Saguna form of God. It should be very good news to you because you see that God every day, right? And how can you fool me by telling I have not seen God? Look at the flower. How can anyone fool? That's bright sun. Each one American says today, oh, what a beautiful day. Is it not? Everyone says, what is that beautiful? That is God. Did White House switch it on that? It is God. Suppose it's cloudy, what can you do about it? Gayatri is shining through the sun. That is called Saguna. Otherwise, we will be all lifetime worrying, God has not come to me in a personal form and appeared before. It is also possible. Right here, God is sitting and talking to you. And right here, God is sitting in every one of you and looking at me. Looking at me. Suppose that God changes his center from your body. What is there in this? It will be buried and handful of worms behind the silken what? Cloth. Cremated handful of ashes. So what time the death will come to this body, you would never know. But to conquer the fear of death, you have to conquer the attachment to this body, knowing that this body is a beautiful instrument given by God to realize Him. That is the foremost duty, the priority. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. All else, everything else shall be added. That's the main teaching of Christ. Prathamate hari katha nirupana dusarete rajakarana. Samartha Ramdas saint taught Shivaji. First, foremost duty is prayer to the Almighty. Rest of it is all duty performed with the spirit of puja or worship. Therefore, every day please feel in the sun, the moon, the stars, the flowers, Mother Earth, everywhere salute seeing God in everyone. You cannot miss God because there is no place where there is no God. The demon father Hiranyakashipu asked Prahalada, where is God? Prahalada says, Daddy, tell me where he is not. That's the best answer for that. Kabirdas says, I have belly laughter when people think that they have not seen God, because how can the fish forget the water? It is born in water, moves in water, has its being in water, its food is water. It is God who is the consciousness in us. It is the God who is the life in us. It is the God who is the soul in us. It is the God who is the memory in us. It is God who is the breath in us. It is the God who is the luster in the eyes, sound in the ear, touch in the skin, taste in the tongue. We move and have our being in Him. Mattaha parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. Mayi protabidam sarvam sutre manigana iva. Bhagavad Gita discusses, I am the string, you are all the beads. God is the uniting factor. God is love who unites everybody. As we call vinculum substantial, uniting factor. Arjuna, there is nothing besides me. Mattaha parataram nanyat. There is nothing besides me. It is not that God is somewhere, but the somewhere is in God. Could there be somewhere without God? Within, everywhere there is nothing but God. It is like a little child asking the church priest when he said God is in heaven. And then when the priest said God created heaven and earth, then the child was confused. He said, you said God is in heaven and then you said God created heaven and earth. When God created heaven and earth, before that creating heaven and earth, where was God? The little child asked. Priest says, well, God was in heaven. Before he created heaven, where was he? Again, God was in heaven. The priest couldn't understand that God himself is heaven. It is not that God has a kingdom like a house we have. Instead, kingdom itself is God. In God's kingdom, kingdom is not separate from God. In God's kingdom, his wife Lakshmi is not separate from him. In God's kingdom, everything is God. And let that kingdom come on earth means to see only that God. All that it requires is the love eyes. To develop love eyes. That's why you chant. That's why you meditate. That's why you sing. That's why you listen to the Hari Kathas. So that your heart becomes so holy, mind becomes so pure, emotions are running constantly towards God. That's when you feel God, experience God. And whenever you experience, because he came here as the essence of entire evolution is man, therefore he came as man, as woman, on earth, as Devi, as Shakti, as Rudra, as Rama, Ganesha, all these higher Saguna manifestations again came on earth. And when he came as a man or a woman, then human beings understood.
As always, it's very insightful to hear from Guruji, and I thoroughly enjoy hearing his pearls of wisdom. So thank you for sharing those in each episode.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And, we have Ram Navami coming up on April 6th. So we're giving a little preview to our listeners that we plan to do a special episode for Lord Rama in dedication to him. And we touched a little bit on it today, but we look forward to continuing discussion and glories of Sri Ramachandra on April 6th. So that's going to be our next episode. But Vikram, it's been great. And
likewise.
And listeners, please do take advantage of all the different ways that you can connect with us. If you have any questions, please email us or send us messages on social media platform. Then please, by all means, let us know how we're doing, because we appreciate the feedback, constructive criticism. We're open for everything. So, and if you have any questions that we can entertain or try to find the answers for, we'd love to do that. So, thank you. Be well. God bless. Take care. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.